Welcome back once more to Part B of What Makes Up a Healthy Diet. In Part A, we talked about micronutrients. Now we'll talk about nourishing fluids, and we'll finish off with an introduction to macronutrients. So, without further ado, let's talk about nourishing fluids. Suffice it to say, nourishing fluids don't include coffee or alcohol or soda or Kool-Aid or energy drinks. I hope I haven't just broken your heart. But don't hate me, I'm just the messenger. Nourishing fluids do include pure water, caffeine-free herb tea, fresh juice, broth, and probiotic drinks. These fluids nourish us by replenishing vital fluids that we lose each day and providing other health-enhancing benefits. Drinking fluids is absolutely critical to creating your very best body. About 60% of adult bodies and 75% of baby bodies are water. On average, people lose 2 to 3 quarts of water every single day. Most people are chronically dehydrated and they don't even know it. Are you? Common symptoms of dehydration include dark urine, sluggishness, fatigue, headaches, muscle cramps, and lightheadedness. So you definitely don't want to skimp on your nourishing fluids. The most obvious nourishing fluid is, of course, water, which is the basis for all nourishing fluids. Take a look at this image from the U.S. Geological Survey for a snapshot of everything water does for you. I'm not going to read every point here, but put me on pause for a moment if you'd like to do that. But this is why you should drink your fluids every day. I'm not trying to be hard on you. This is just the way it is. So how much should you be drinking each day? Opinions vary. You may have heard about drinking 8 glasses a day or dividing your weight in half and drinking that much water in ounces. This sounds much more reasonable to me than drinking 8 glasses of water a day, irrespective of how much you weigh, how active you are, or the climate you live in. You can easily calculate this for yourself. Just divide your weight by 2 to get the number of ounces per day, and then divide that by 8 to get the number of 8-ounce glasses per day. If I were to live in an extremely hot or high-altitude climate, or if I were a competitive athlete or had a labor-intensive job, I would increase that amount by a few glasses at least. If you aren't used to drinking fluids, you might think this is a lot, but once you start drinking the appropriate amount of fluids for you, I think you'll find it easy. As with anything new, you just have to start doing it and then you'll get used to it quickly. In fact, if you haven't been drinking enough fluids, you may feel so much better that you'll want to drink your fluids. One of my rules of thumb is to drink 12 ounces of pure water when I wake up, so there's 1 glass down as soon as I get up. The one thing your body wants more than anything else first thing in the morning is water. Now, 2 words about bottled water. Ditch it. In my opinion, one of the greatest marketing coups of all time is the branding of plain old water as a designer product worthy of outrageous prices when a glass of filtered tap water costs pennies. Here are 3 high points from a groundbreaking study conducted by the nonpartisan consumer group National Resources Defense Council. First, bottled water use in the U.S. has exploded, driven in large measure by marketing designed to convince the public of bottled water's purity and safety and exploiting concerns about tap water quality. People spend from 240 to 10,000 times more per gallon for bottled water than they typically do for tap water. I just don't get that at all. Second, deceptive marketing by some companies implies that their water comes from pristine sources when it definitely does not. For example, one brand of quote-unquote spring water, whose label pictured a lake and mountains, actually came from a well in an industrial facility's parking lot near a hazardous waste dump and was periodically contaminated with industrial chemicals at levels exceeding FDA standards. How about that? Third, at least 25% of bottled water, and by some accounts as much as 40%, is tap water. Sometimes with additional treatment, sometimes not. And that means sometimes it's filtered and sometimes it's straight out of the tap. So you're paying $1.49 or more for the same thing that you can get at home for free. I don't know about you, but I have other things I could be doing with my money. If that's not enough to convince you to stay away from bottled drinks, toxins from plastic drink bottles have been shown to leach into the drink, especially when they've been left in a hot place. Have you ever left a bottle of water in a hot car and found it tasted funny when you drank it? Those are the toxins you're tasting. Plastics contain phthalates, and you pronounce that with the PH silent. You may have heard of phthalates, or at least of bisphenol A, or BPA for short, which is just one class of phthalate. Phthalates disrupt hormonal activity and therefore cause metabolic damage. The EPA has reported that female rats exposed to phthalates produced offspring with a broad variety of abnormalities relating to their hormones and reproductive organs. The EPA states that it is, quote, concerned about phthalates because of their toxicity and the evidence of pervasive human and environmental exposure to these chemicals. Phthalates are used in many industrial and consumer products, many of which pose potentially high exposure. Phthalates have been detected in food and also measured in humans, end quote. This means phthalates are being stored in our bodies. Other studies have linked phthalates to high blood pressure, hyperactivity, increased aggressiveness, impaired learning, early puberty, heart disease, increased prostate size, and decreased sperm production. A simple home water filter saves a lot of money. It's more ecologically sound, too. Just get a non-plastic drink container and fill it up and take it with you. Let's now move on to herbal teas. Caffeine-free herbal teas are loaded with polyphenols, which are powerful phytonutrients. All herbs have medicinal properties, and they've been tried and tested over thousands of years in every culture. How's that for a testimonial? If you don't know a lot about herbs or herb teas, there's a whole wonderful world out there just waiting for you to explore. I'm giving you this introduction just to wet your feet and get you excited. Here's a table with just a few of the thousands of herb teas available and their therapeutic uses. And just to make it extra easy for people who aren't familiar with all the therapeutic uses of herb teas, a lot of companies offer herbal tea blends for specific therapeutic uses, so they take all the guesswork out of it for you. I've included a few of these on this slide. I strongly encourage you to look into herbal teas to address any ailments you may be dealing with before you turn to over-the-counter drugs. Now I want to take a quick left turn for a few minutes and talk about caffeine, since there are so many caffeinated drinks out there, not just coffee and tea, but soda and energy drinks. Chocolate also has caffeine, so you can count hot chocolate and mocha drinks too. Caffeinated drinks are not nourishing fluids, period. Caffeine is a diuretic, so it's actually dehydrating. It's also a very powerful drug that alters brain chemistry and is highly addictive, which you may know firsthand. I know I do. I'm very susceptible to the effects of caffeine, and I've been addicted many times. Caffeine addiction is something I've experienced as having a creeping up on you effect. While a cup of coffee or caffeinated tea can make you feel mentally alert, crossing the line to caffeine addiction can affect your ability to think clearly and make you irritable. The irritability relates to the fact that caffeine can compromise your adrenal function, which is essential to a healthy metabolism. Caffeine has also been shown to lower insulin sensitivity. Well, insulin sensitivity is the hallmark of a healthy metabolism, so we don't want it lowered. Have you heard the term insulin resistant? Insulin resistance is the opposite of insulin sensitivity and is the precursor to type 2 diabetes, so we most certainly want to be insulin sensitive. So the short of it is that habitually consuming excess caffeine is a large contributor to metabolic damage. You might remember that excess caffeine consumption was listed as a cause of inflammation, which, as you now know, is a characteristic of metabolic damage. Caffeine withdrawal can also be a painful process. If you have a habit of saying, I can't function without my morning coffee, if you get headaches when you don't get your daily dose of caffeine, or if you feel mentally fuzzy or irritable, these are all signs of caffeine addiction. And of course, the biggest sign of all is when you have these symptoms and you know they're related to your caffeine consumption and you don't stop anyway. That's addiction with a capital A. Enjoy your coffee and caffeinated teas, but be conservative in your consumption. I strongly suggest limiting your daily consumption to 1 cup of coffee, at the most. And just to be clear, a cup is not 20 ounces. I'm talking about 1 8-ounce cup of coffee, max, or 1 tea bag if you're having caffeinated tea. And don't include these drinks as nourishing fluids. 8 ounces is actually way more than I can handle, so you really need to listen to your body when you drink coffee or anything with caffeine. Both coffee and tea have antioxidants, which is good, but because they're dehydrating, they can't be included as nourishing fluids. This table shows the caffeine content in a number of common caffeinated beverages and, in one case, food. So you might be wondering just how much caffeine is too much. That's a good question. You see, my daily limits are pretty darn modest. If you do a web search, you'll probably see a lot of different answers to this because the answer seems to be changing all the time. I feel like I'm frequently hearing about yet another study telling us the safe daily amount. I've heard as much as 8 cups of coffee a day is okay. And honestly, I don't get that one bit. That would put me way, way, way over the edge. Just like a lot of things we've been talking about, this can't be a one-size-fits-all. How can 8 cups of coffee be okay for petite little me and a 6-foot, 250-pound man? That just sounds crazy to me. Take a look at this normal spider's web compared to the web of a spider on caffeine. Yes, some researchers thought there would be some value in seeing what would happen if they jacked up a spider on caffeine. And you know what? That web looks exactly like how my brain feels when I'm addicted to caffeine, so I'm not surprised by this at all. So how do you go about getting off caffeine if you're addicted? I know of only 2 ways: cold turkey or cut back slowly. Whichever you choose, be realistic. Addiction is a powerful force. Cutting back slowly can take time, and going cold turkey can be painful. For me, though, going cold turkey is actually easier than cutting back because the minute I have a little caffeine, I want more. But that's me. Pick what works for you. Okay, let's move on to fresh juice. Fresh juice is always better than bottled, but if you choose bottled juice, make sure it's in a glass bottle, of course, after our discussion of plastics, and if it's fruit juice, make sure it's pure juice and not from concentrate. Fresh fruits and vegetables provide vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and fiber. While juicing can diminish some fiber and nutrient content if your juicer filters out the fibrous part of the plant, fresh juice is still a powerful, nourishing fluid. I use my Vitamix to make my juices, which doesn't extract anything, and that's exactly the way I like it. I add the whole fruit or vegetable and then some water to help liquefy it. If you have a bowel disease such as irritable bowel syndrome or Crohn's disease and fiber irritates your gut, then by all means, filter out the fiber when you juice. When using fruit, keep in mind that pure fruit juice with the fiber extracted contains high quantities of sugar. As we'll discuss in our class on carbs, which is coming up soon, even sugar from natural sources affects your blood sugar. This trips a lot of people up, so let me give you a little preview of one thing we'll talk about in that class. As far as your body is concerned, sugar is sugar, whether it comes from fruit or a packet of refined sucrose. Your body treats it the same. Remember our discussion of the gut. All carbs get broken down into simple sugars. Okay, there's your preview. Because of the sugar content, I don't advocate drinking pure fruit juice, but I do like fruit spritzers, which you can make very easily by blending 3 ounces of pure organic fruit juice or a small amount of fresh fruit with about 12 ounces of water. Some vegetables, such as carrots and beets, also contain high amounts of sugar when you juice them and remove the fiber. So when you're juicing, make yourself a vegetable cocktail that blends smaller amounts of high sugar veggies with higher amounts of low sugar veggies, such as spinach, kale, or broccoli. And if you add fruit, use predominantly low sugar veggies and no more than 2/3 of a cup of fruit because of the sugar. Coconut juice has become very popular recently. Coconut water is the same as coconut juice. I don't know why some brands call themselves juice while others call themselves water. Coconut juice is the clear liquid inside coconuts, and it's particularly rich in electrolytes. Aha, remember what we just talked about. And this makes it an outstanding detoxifier and hydrator, and I'll add a great sports drink. Now let's talk about broth. I love drinking organic broth, especially on a cold winter's night. Whether it's vegetable, chicken, or beef, broth is extremely nourishing. If you're not a vegan or a vegetarian, bone broth is particularly rich in minerals, and you can make it very easily yourself. In fact, I'm going to give you a recipe for it at the end of this class. One thing you need to watch out for, though, with packaged broth, even the organic variety, I'm afraid, is flavoring compounds that can produce adverse reactions in some people. You'll often see vague terms such as natural flavorings and spices on a food label. This is a tip-off that the product has flavoring additives. We'll talk all about flavoring additives in the second half of the next class. If you buy packaged broth, make sure it's organic and make sure the ingredients are transparent. That is, that there are no cryptic terms like natural flavors or spices or things like that. Okay, last up, probiotic drinks, which are cultured and fermented drinks. Of course, not all fermented drinks are probiotic drinks. I certainly don't want to give you the idea that beer is a probiotic drink. Probiotics are the friendly bacteria that live in your gut and are absolutely essential to having healthy digestive and immune systems. Probiotics have become trendy recently, but probiotic foods and drinks have always been a staple in a healthy diet. Every civilization throughout antiquity has had a probiotic food or drink, so there are lots of options. Let me talk about my two favorites. First, kombucha. I love, love, love kombucha. While you may never have heard of kombucha, it's been consumed in many cultures for thousands of years. It originated in China around 200 BC and was known there as the fountain of youth, and for very good reason. Kombucha is incredibly energizing. If the taste is too strong for you, try making a kombucha spritzer by diluting it with water. Now, one caution if you don't drink alcohol. Some kombucha brands contain 1 to 3% alcohol by volume. Of course, kombucha is a fermented drink. For people who don't drink alcohol, some companies have come out with kombucha that contains 0.5% or less alcohol by volume, which is the point at which a drink can be said to contain no alcohol. I don't drink alcohol and I've never had a problem drinking the non-alcoholic version, but the decision to drink it should definitely be yours if you have concerns about drinking anything that contains even 0.5% alcohol by volume. The Synergy brand, which is the brand I drink, labels its kombucha that contains the 1 to 3% alcohol as its classic version. The non-alcoholic version doesn't have the classic label, so you decide for yourself. Another probiotic drink that I love is coconut kefir, and I drink a brand called Kavita. It's delicious, and it's so refreshingly effervescent. If you're addicted to soda, coconut kefir would be a great soda alternative. If you don't live in the US, you may not be able to get these same brands, but I'm guessing there are similar drinks where you live. The best place to find them is your closest health food store. I wouldn't buy these drinks online because they must be kept refrigerated. Now, here are some easy and delicious recipes for nourishing fluids. Notice that some of these recipes don't even need preparation. They're ready-made. How easy is that? I've included brands I like, but there are many other good brands of these nourishing fluids. Okay, we'll end this class by introducing macronutrients. Macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Our bodies use carbs for energy. Carbs are just like gas to a car. They provide the fuel we need to function. Protein is used by our bodies for building and repairing our biochemicals. Every second, old cells are dying and new cells are being generated. Fat. And oh, do we have some strange beliefs about fat that we are going to clear up. Fat is used for both energy and building and repair. So fat pulls double duty. So important, yet so disrespected. We need a variety of quality sources of each macronutrient in the proper balance to be healthy. Well, congratulations! You now know what a healthy diet is, and I feel confident that you will never again waste your time and money on a fad diet. In the next class, you're going to learn all about food quality, and get ready to shoot down the rabbit hole for this one, because if you're like any of my other students, you'll be nothing short of shocked at what you're going to learn. But knowledge is power, and it will forever change the way you look at the foods that you may have been eating for years. And now your action items. First thing in the morning, drink 12 ounces of pure water. Then calculate your daily intake of nourishing fluids by following the calculation on slide 2 and drink that amount of nourishing fluids every day. Increase your daily amount if you live in a hot or high altitude climate or if you have a labor-intensive job. And use the recipes I gave you. Becoming a sipper makes it easy to get your fluids in. If you have a desk job, just keep a non-plastic bottle at your desk and sip it throughout the day. If you're on the go, get a non-plastic bottle, fill it up, and take it with you. Then, if you're addicted to caffeine, start weaning yourself off. If you're like me and it's easier for you to go cold turkey than to wean yourself off it slowly, set aside a weekend to start the process. If you're not too addicted, that might be all you need. Otherwise, start reducing your consumption as slowly as you need to. If you go too fast, it won't stick. And finally, if you're doing My Best Body with a buddy or a buddy group, keep the momentum going. Keep those meetings up. Okie dokie, you're doing great. Keep it up, and I'll see you next time for our next class. Cheers!